happy to bring you all together for our last session of the day today. I am here with a couple of very special guests. We have Assemblywoman Joann Downey from the New Jersey State Assembly, and Assemblywoman Downey is a social worker and a lawyer by degree. And we also have Delaware State Senator Marie Pinckney, also a social worker, who is here today. And they are going to share a little bit with you about their roads to elected office, starting off where they came from, and just maybe provide some information about how you might be able to get involved at some point in elected office too someday. So let me start with Assemblywoman Downey. Welcome so much.
Thanks so much, Jeff. And hi, it's good to see everybody on the screen that I can. It's wonderful, but there are 9 pages here, so I'm not going to see everybody. It's amazing. Thank you for joining. You know, my particular road was a little bit different from a lot of people because what I did was I wound up becoming a lawyer first. So I became a lawyer, and it was because my dad was in the state police, and I had wanted to become a prosecutor, and I was always thinking, you know, in my mind, I wanted to put the bad guys away. Funny enough, like, you know, that's at, you know, how old? I mean, I was 8 years old when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and that's what I wanted to do. And I just wanted to make sure that people were safe and taken care of. But that kind of evolved into, you know, I almost went into the state police and didn't, but went back to school, became an attorney, and always kind of felt like I was never doing enough. I never felt like I was really quite getting to where I was helping enough people. So, you know, I wanted to be a trial attorney. I wanted to be with people and talk to people about things and advocate. So, and being, you know, basically be in the courtroom. So I went through a few different kinds of jobs, including at the Attorney General's office, where I was a deputy attorney general, and I prosecuted abuse and neglect cases. And I terminated parental rights when necessary. And at that time, that was a key turning point for me, because I realized what a mess the system was here in New Jersey, as well as I'm sure in many other places. What I noticed is that, you know, here we were we were like, you know, finding people, you know, who had abused and neglected their children, but we weren't able to provide services in case they were issues, you know, that could be helped, like, you know, alcohol abuse, substance abuse, things that really could be worked on with psychological help and other help, wraparound services. We didn't have like all these services that were out there to be able to provide for these families. So I went to school at night at Rutgers School of Social Work while I was doing this during the day. And this was before children, so it was slightly easier. And it was crazy because I just remember all the time feeling just very, you know, stressed about it and feeling like, wow, there's got to be something better, because I would have like hundreds of cases that I was taking into court every day and literally crying at the end of the day when I was done. My husband was just like, what's going on? We had just gotten married a little while before, and he's like, what are you doing? And I said, it's just so sad. The whole thing is just so horrible and sad. And I want to help these people more. So he wound up getting into Brown for the school. He was getting a PhD in American history. So we moved out to Rhode Island for a little while for that, so he could do that. And I finished my master's in social work over at Boston University School of Social Work. Then, because I was an attorney here, I have to get into the bar over in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, depending on where, if I was going to work. So what I did was, in New York, I had the New York bar, and there's reciprocity with Massachusetts. So I was waiting for my reciprocity to kick in. It was going to take a while, and it's a long process. But in the meantime, I finished my degree, and I said, let me work in this field, you know, that I have, you know, really found to be an important area. And so I started working inside homes, like going to doing visits with different families and trying to help and trying to advocate in schools for them. So I was providing all kinds of therapy, group therapy, family therapy, individual therapy. And then I continued to start a day treatment program for children and families while I was in Rhode Island as well. And really found out too, as the director of that program, how hard it was to keep money into the program and to continue to have this program, which was really important because it was basically like the stopgap in the middle kind of level to be able to get kids who were in the psychiatric hospital back to this home for children, because they were DC, back there it was DCYF. Here, you know, DIFUS, that was when I was here, but now children and families. So they basically had to now go back to their families with no other like they weren't getting enough treatment, or the families weren't really being able to help to make sure that they understood how to work with their children when they had issues, psychiatric illnesses that they didn't understand. So what I tried to do with this program is work on individual therapy, family therapy, and group therapy to hopefully give them more tools so that while they were in that middle area, that they could do this and try to break that cycle. So that was a really great experience, and I loved it. And we wound up coming, when my husband was done with his stuff at Brown, we wound up coming back to New Jersey, and I resumed my practice in law, because I got to tell you the truth. Those 3 years dealing with all of the different issues I had been dealing with, it was very stressful, and I felt very burnt. I really did. So I want to tell you that because I want you to know that I understand what that feels like as well. I know how important it is for you to take care of yourself. And I had tried to do that too by getting colleagues to help, trying to get my own therapy services in place, because it was really important to pull yourself out of that whole, world, because you sort of get so involved and enmeshed in the area, whatever you're doing, that, you kind of forget there's a whole different world out there. Not everybody has these same issues. So you got to kind of bring yourself out, bring yourself to a calm, kind of take a breather, and realize that the only way you can help other people is to be healthy yourself, right? So it was a wonderful thing to do it. I really I enjoyed it more than anything. But the other problem with it is you didn't make enough money. And I had been the breadwinner in my family as the attorney. My husband's a professor. He's a history professor. They don't really make a tremendous amount of money. It took him 6 years to get a full-time job here in the state of New Jersey, which is insane. So I had to go back to work as an attorney. And it was probably about time, but I still never felt like I was getting to where I wanted to. It was hard. It's so hard to explain. Like I was helping more people on an individual level, but I still felt this need to do more. So then I got involved with the Monmouth County Democrats here in New Jersey. And somebody asked me, the chair asked me why I was doing this. Why did I get involved? And I said, well, I don't know. I want to do anything I can do to help. So he asked, well, do you want to be a judge? Do you want to run for office? What do you want to do? And I said, all of that, really, and whenever I can. He said, well, why don't you want to run for the assembly here in the state of New Jersey? And I was like, wow, okay. Because literally I had just met him like 3 weeks before, and I just got involved. And what was really great? I didn't even hesitate, because I knew for some reason that this is probably where I needed to be at that moment. And I took the opportunity and I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. What's funny when I think about it too, is that I had 2 little girls at home who were only, 4 and 5 years old at the time. And my husband, I didn't ask him, but women have to sometimes really just take the reins and go with what your feelings are, because we tend to think too much about these things. And I really want to try to promote women running for office as well, and reminding them, don't take too much time, because if somebody opens that door, walk through it, take those chances, grab it, go for it, right? Because you don't know what you can wind up doing. And by the way, I didn't know that they never expected us to win, because in this district in Monmouth County, I'm a Democrat, just so you know, and they're all, basically this is mostly a Republican area. So nobody, and I live in a very Republican town and where I live, and they just thought, we just need a person in there to run. But there was like this really interesting thing. We had done redistricting 6 years before, 5 years before, I think, I'm sorry. And at some point they knew our district was changing, because we wound up with Asbury Park and Red Bank and a lot of other places that really started to change in terms of their demographics. And so I just happened to get there at the time that it had changed enough, and we worked hard. I mean, we really worked hard. We knocked on thousands and thousands of doors and had that absolute field work, grassroots kind of campaign. And we wound up getting a lot more help from our Democratic Assembly campaign committee. Once they saw that we actually had a chance, they put a little bit more money into our race, which was great. And I learned so much and about the people around me, and I realized how much I really enjoyed this. So we won in 2015. It was the craziest thing, and nobody could believe it. And I'm so proud to represent my district. And I got to tell you, since then, I just know that I'm where I need to be. It's like my journey has taken me to a place where I can help more people now because I'm in a position to be able to make laws and, really look at things and see what can we do to change policy here in the state of New Jersey. And the pandemic has also showed me how much we really could help just our constituents generally. Just generally. I mean, from unemployment claims, we've handled thousands and thousands of unemployment claims, and people really need you to help them. People needed all kinds of assistance with other resources as well. And I have a great staff, so I'm really, truly fortunate because we hired a lot of wonderful people to work with us. And you know what? Some of them are now in the School for Social Work because a lot of what they do has to do with social work. And we also have, by the way, interns who are able to intern with me, especially if they're interested in policy as well, which is wonderful. They get to experience what it's like to be able to see these different policies and how we want to change things, and they get to help with those. So I'm really proud of where I am, and we've worked on things from pay equity, where I was the prime sponsor on our pay equity bill here in the state of New Jersey, and including a tool, which I'm very proud of, the salary history bill, which makes it so that potential employers can't ask you what you were making before, because that always kept women back. And this helps to keep it at a level where you get what you're worth. You get whatever is the salary, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. And by the way, it helps everybody, because even we notice young people coming into a situation where they should get paid more money, we're definitely getting paid less, because if they told them they were only making $25,000 before, and all of a sudden the job is worth $40,000, well, they're going to offer you $30,000. Meanwhile, if somebody else with more experience, or again, let's say man versus woman, the woman was only making $25,000 and the man was making $30,000, they would offer, the woman only $30,000 and the man $35,000. But see, that's how you perpetuate this thing. So this is all the policy wonderful things. We worked on sick leave and extended family leave, because I remember when I was a mom, I only got 6 weeks out, and then I had to be back because there was no maternity leave at my law office that I worked for. So now we have 12 weeks, and I'm so proud of that. And we pay them more money too, because you should get more money than what they were paying us here in New Jersey. So we increased the percentage of your salary, your average weekly salary. So there are things like this. And now I'm really happy we're going to try to do things for our social workers. I love that I have that background to know that you mean so much, and we need you, especially now with the pandemic. So I have a bill to try to revitalize that fund that we had to make sure that we have a tuition reimbursement program for our social work students. So if you work with the state of New Jersey in certain contracted jobs, we're going to make sure that for over I think it's $5,000 for 4 years, up to $20,000 you can get back for your tuition. It's a help. Doesn't take care of everything, but it helps. And we're trying to do more of that to be able to make sure that we have you in the field, because you are the ones that are going to continue to help us get through the mental, kind of stress that people just generally have been going through, because people have lost their jobs, they've lost family members, they have lost so much during this pandemic. Children have not been able to go to school, they miss their friends. There's so many things that have happened to people. You're the ones who are there to help pick up the pieces. So we need you to be healthy, and we need you to be able to help. So I want to do the most I can, and I'm hoping we can do more. So I'm always available. Jeff knows that. And, I want to do everything I can to help all of you out there. And happy Professional Social Work Month, because I made sure in March you get celebrated.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman Downey. We really appreciate it. And yes, as she mentioned, last year, 2 years ago, Assemblywoman Downey introduced a resolution, joint resolution in the New Jersey Assembly and the Senate to make sure that every month in New Jersey was Social Work Month. So yes. Every March, I should say.
Every month. I think every month. You're right.
Work month. That's what I'm trying to say. Every month is Social Work Month.
Right.
Thank you so much. Senator Pinkney, please take it away.
Yes, hello everyone. Hello, it's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. Talking to social workers is my favorite because you guys understand there are some things I just don't have to go into real deep detail with because we share a very similar lived experience. So my name is Marie Pinckney. I am a newly elected senator. I was just elected in November of last year. I represent Delaware's 13th district. It covers parts of Newark, Newcastle, and Bear. And I ran because of social work. It's kind of as simple as that. My background started in adolescent mental health and substance abuse. And I did that right out of grad school. So I graduated from Norfolk State University in 2013. I did the advanced standing program at Delaware State University and graduated in 2014 and went right into outpatient practice and loved it. I absolutely loved that work. It was life-changing. And I always thought that I was going to spend my whole career working with teens, but I did end up leaving that facility mostly because of something that we all know. I had a master's degree, $108,000 worth of student loan debt, and I was making $17 an hour. And I had to go because I had to pay for that $108,000 worth of student loan debt. So I left there and actually went into medical social work. And I spent 3 years working in acute trauma at Christiana Hospital here in Delaware. Christiana Hospital has the only level 1 trauma center in the area. So everything came to the ICU where I worked. Gunshot victims, car accidents, little mamas falling downstairs. I saw it all on such a consistent basis. And I loved working there and I was really good at it. I've always been really good at working with other people's emotional kind of stuff. And it's a special kind of emotional stuff when it's acute trauma like that, because you're dealing with somebody who may have just been walking and living their best life yesterday. And today they're paralyzed because they got in a car accident that broke their spine. And that is where I really first started experiencing burnout, because I was tired of people coming into the ICU. I wanted to stop them. I was tired of working on the end of it where I was helping people navigate not having health insurance, but now being paralyzed, or tired of Black men coming and being shot on what is a weekly basis. Tired of people not having access to outside providers, because when you come into the hospital, we have to do everything for you. It's a hospital. We don't get to say what your insurance is and not accept it. You're in an emergency room. We have to work with you. We have to take care of you. But that doesn't apply when you leave the hospital. And I got to a point where I stopped loving social work. And that was difficult for me because I had gone into this career that I was so passionate about, that I enjoyed so much, but I was not finding passion anymore because I wanted to stop people from coming into the hospital. Around that same time, and this was maybe 2019 after spending 3 years there, around that same time, we had President Trump, and I was just like, it can't be that difficult to be in office if this man's doing it. So let me figure out how I get there. Let me look into it and figure this out a little bit. And I got curious. And so I started kind of peeking around, trying to figure out what to do. And like the Assemblywoman, I didn't, well, I won't say like you because you didn't say this, but I will honestly say I didn't know what I was doing. I kind of stumbled my way there. I kind of figured out like, who should I talk to? How do I make this happen? And Delaware at the time, and probably like most places in the country, had a lot of programs that were geared towards helping people learn how to run for office. So I stumbled my way into what is called Ready to Run. It was a program specifically for helping women learn how to run an effective campaign. Like I said, I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't really realize that the program was going to help me run a campaign. I just thought I was going to get information about how to be a senator or be in office, but they ended up telling us how to run for office, and it made sense. It seemed logical. Like, you knock on some doors, you raise some money. If you talk to enough people, you can win a campaign. And I was like, I can do that. That seems kind of simple. Again, the naivety in me, I didn't really realize that the office that I was seeking, the state Senate, my current legislator at the time was actually the president pro temp of the Senate of our state, which means he's the most powerful senator of all of our senators in the state. He leads the General Assembly, he leads the Senate. And he had been in office for 34 years, 38 years, almost 40 years, basically. So he'd been in office longer than I had been alive, and had run unopposed for 33 years. And for some reason, that didn't seem like too much of a hurdle for me because I decided to run anyway. So I ran against him primarily because I was really disappointed in his work on some gun laws that had been introduced the year prior. There were 3 gun bills that came into the General Assembly, and because of his position as the president pro temp, and because of his position as the chairman of the committee where those bills were introduced, he made it so those pieces of legislation never even made it out of committee. They never even made it to the committee floor. They never got heard. They never had a chance to get voted on. No one ever had the opportunity to even say whether or not they supported the bills. So set aside how you feel about guns. Democracy is supposed to be that we have the opportunity to debate the issues, talk about the issues, and he kept that opportunity from our state. And mind you, I told you that I work in a profession where Black men and women are coming into the ICU where I work on a regular basis after being shot. And so that, quite frankly, pissed me off. I was so upset about that. And, I decided to run. I decided to throw my hat in the ring and see what I could do. And like the Assemblywoman, no one expected me to win. No one thought that our team was going to take out the president pro temp. It was not supposed to happen. This man had $200,000 worth of campaign finances. I, at my highest, had $35,000, and that was probably 6 months into the campaign when we finally reached $35,000. Primarily because I really hate fundraising, and that has not changed. It is the most awkward and uncomfortable thing for me, and I do not like it, and that'll probably never change, but we made it work with $35,000, and we won the primary, and it was the most incredible experience because I really don't get to take much of that credit. It is the credit of the people who came around me and believed in what I wanted to do, what I was saying, and uplifted my message and pounded the pavement and knocked the doors. And then a pandemic happened, which was the craziest thing. So nobody could tell us how to run an effective campaign in the middle of a pandemic because nobody had done that. So we had to figure that out. And it was so interesting to navigate this thing that nobody had ever really done before. So where we were able to knock doors and effectively talk to people at the doors, now we had to pick up the phone and call people. So when you're running a campaign, they'll tell you this super interesting thing that when you knock doors, you'll probably get every 10 doors that you knock, 1 will answer. So when you're calling, it's probably 0.5 people will answer the phone. And it was a really, really interesting and close race. And the most stressful part about it is when the primary happened, the results took almost all night, but a lot of people's races were called at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock. My race was the last one called. It didn't get called until 1 o'clock in the morning. So me and all of my campaign volunteers were on a Zoom until 1 o'clock in the morning, just waiting for the results to come in. But we did it. Somehow 3,111 people voted for us, and we won that election. And I'll never forget that number. I say it all the time because it's still unbelievable. So from there, we ran the general election. I live in a different district than you, Assemblywoman. My district is very heavily Democratic, so we didn't really have any concerns about the general election. And we won that election, and it's still an amazing thing to be able to say that my name was on the ballot at the same time as Kamala Harris. Never going to forget that. It's amazing. But so from there, we were sworn in January 12th. I always say we because, again, this was so much and continues to be so much bigger than me. This is definitely a movement of a lot of people. And since then, we've been working on a lot of issues. I am fortunate enough to be the chair of corrections and public health. So I'm working on a lot of things in that area, particularly around prison oversight. I'm also the vice chair of our housing committee. So we've been working on a homeless bill of rights for individuals who are experiencing homelessness to say that they have a right to occupy space and a bunch of other things. Also from the New Jersey legislature, we kind of copied a bill that you guys have successfully passed, and it will provide early release credits for individuals who have been incarcerated during the pandemic. So we teamed up with some of the New Jersey General Assembly and saw how effective that bill was. And right now it's sitting in our House Corrections Committee, and will has made it out of there, has to hit the House floor, and then it'll come over to the Senate where we're expecting it to be successful. I think you guys heard from my colleague, the amazing Senator Sarah McBride earlier today, and she is leading the way on paid family and medical leave. What else are we working on? A lot of stuff, guys, working on a whole lot of bills. I don't want to keep talking too much, but any legislation that you guys want to hear about, we're working on a ton of stuff. And I'm so just excited about what Delaware has done. Right now, our state legislature is the most diverse that it's ever been in the history of Delaware. I was elected as the first openly LGBTQ Black individual to our state legislature. Sarah McBride was elected as the first transgender individual in the entire country. We have our first elected woman practicing of Muslim faith that was elected, our first Black woman or Black individual below the canal of Delaware, which Delaware is a really interesting place because up here it's super democratic, but if you go anywhere past our capital, it's not at all. It's like a completely different. It's like Alabama down there sometimes. If you live down there, I'm sorry, but it's true.
Senator, I'm so sorry to jump in. I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for Tanya, who was able to join us from the School of Political Social Work. Tanya, are you still here with us?
I am, and boy, you could have kept going. How inspiring! I am so delighted to be with you, and I am sorry. I'm on the road, so I had to find a place to set up shop for a few minutes. It's great to be with all of you, and I can stay a little longer, Jeff. I don't need to jump. I mean, I'm happy to listen too.
Okay, well, I mean, the day's going to end at about 3:15, but I just thought with the time that we had, there had been some discussions a little bit earlier about the Ready to Run program that Senator Pinkney used. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk some more about the work that you're doing at the Nancy Humphreys School and how social workers can get involved in that if they're interested.
I would be delighted to, and I'll be very, very quick. We just held our 25th anniversary of the campaign school for social workers last weekend at the University of Connecticut, and it was really exciting. We had almost 200 social workers, students, social workers at heart from around the country attend. And it was exciting as you know, Friday, Saturday, kind of all day programs can be long days, but everyone was logged in at 9 a.m. and stayed on until 3. It was exciting. And we talked about some of the things that you just mentioned in terms of what do social workers and all of us need to know to get into politics. It's a long runway for some people, and it starts with really what we want to do is to get more social workers involved in campaigns to start with as a first step. You know, there aren't enough social workers, and there aren't enough of the communities that we serve working on campaigns. And I guess I should start by just introducing the fact that I am the director of the Nancy A. Humphreys Institute for Political Social Work. And in addition to being our 25th anniversary, for the campaign school and the Institute itself, it was really founded by a woman whose shoulders I stand on, who was my mentor and my friend and my professor, who believed that if we as social workers aren't in these circles, then people who know less than us will be making decisions about public policy without us at the table. And so when we think about an inclusive democracy, we think about a democracy that meets the needs of all people. And that means that who votes matters, because elected officials and policy is geared towards to respond to the needs of voters. Who shapes policy matters. Who's testifying, who's influencing and meeting with legislators, who's counted in the census and where they counted, that matters. And who's running. I mean, as we're hearing here, it's so inspiring to hear how we can shape democracy if we get the right people at the table. And for too long, it's been full of people who don't represent social workers, don't represent not only our values, but they don't look like America. They don't respond to all Americans. The structural inequities and the racism will only change if we can get more people at the table. So the campaign school is about getting people to work on a campaign, training them to be campaign managers, training them how to raise money. We spend a significant amount of time doing just that, which is something that most of us hate doing, but it's a practice skill. And I would say that about all politics. It's a practice skill. And the first time we approach these spaces, and whether it's testifying, whether it's calling our legislators, whether it's running as a candidate, it can be terrifying, and it can feel like an insider's game. But the reality is that it's a small circle and we belong there. And so we have a tagline at the campaign school. It's called "Consider Yourself Asked." So I hope all of you will be inspired by today to run for office, to work on campaigns, to knock on doors, to register voters every chance you get, encourage people to turn out. All of these things matter. And we do have another campaign school. There's a campaign school at the end of March that will be March 26th and 27th. And I'll send it out, Jeff, if you don't mind sending it out for me. It's a collaboration of 5 schools in Philadelphia who are running it, and they have some capacity. They've just opened it up to invite a few more folks to join us. So we're excited about that, and I'll get that information out to you.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much. Was there anything else you wanted to conclude with, Tanya, or that was it?
I don't think so. I'm just really inspired, and thank you for inviting me today.
Of course. Well, thank you. We enjoyed partnering with you during the Road to November campaign, and definitely are looking forward to continuing our work with you. So I know that we are approaching 3:15 very quickly, which is the end time. And I know it's been a long day, and I would like to be respectful of your time. Let me just ask really quickly if our panelists, Assemblywoman Downey, Senator Pinckney, Tanya, are you able to stay on for another 10 minutes or so in case there are any questions? Okay, fantastic. So folks, if you need to go, we completely understand that. I hope you enjoyed today, and you will be getting a follow-up email probably early next week with copies of slides and more information about the things that we discussed today. And if you need to step off now, thank you so much for attending. Anybody that has questions for any of our panelists that are left? I have one question that's come up a couple of times. I don't know if anybody is willing to discuss it, but there's been some concern that's come up in the chat a few times about the vote that Senator Sinema made against raising the minimum wage and perhaps some other things. And I'm just wondering, does anybody have thoughts on the stances that she has taken and how they relate to social work or her background as a social worker? I know it's a lot.
You want us to? It's really sort of, a tough situation, because I don't necessarily agree, but I understand it as an attorney. I look at it in this other way too, this other lens, and as a legislator, and I look at how, on both ends, I look at how I understand why they were trying to get this in this particular bill, because it's so hard to get things like this passed. And I know that in the state of New Jersey, it took a long time to be able to try to do that as well. So, I mean, it's a very hard vote when you have, especially, still a lot of conservative people out there who don't want to see that, and businesses, small businesses, other businesses, and a lot of businesses have been hurt, especially during the pandemic. So even though we know overall from studies and different things, different research, that, that's not what hurts a lot of these companies. I mean, if they weren't doing well to begin with, the $15 an hour really isn't going to be the thing that pushes them, over the edge. But that's people's purview. That's what they're coming from. And that's the political argument, right? And on her end, I would say, she was also looking at the fact that here they're trying to do in the reconciliation bill, which only requires more than 50%, whereas if you were to do it in a regular bill, then because of the filibuster rule, then it has to be 60 over 60. And that's the problem. That's what the problem we have with cinema not voting for it, right? We say, why wouldn't you when this is the time to vote for it in the reconciliation bill? But her point is that when you really look at it, it doesn't really belong in there. It belongs as a standalone bill. It really should be a standalone bill and it should pass. But then we need to get rid of the filibuster. And that's Democrats got to do it now. This is where you're in control. Take it. I don't know why it's there, because if you're in control, you were elected, more than 50% should be it. More than 50% is the majority. Go for it now. And that's what we should do. That's just my opinion.
That's an interesting question. It's also interesting to be from Delaware, where we have all Democratic representation in Washington, D.C., but our two Democratic senators are the only two Democrats who voted against the $15 minimum wage. So that's an interesting perspective. I'm struggling with that idea as a social work background. So if we're talking specifically about someone coming from a social work background where we recognize that no one should be living in poverty, and we know statistically the outcomes of people living in poverty, we know what that does to the family dynamic, we know what it does to the ecosystem dynamic. So when we're talking specifically about her background as a social worker, I'm disturbed by it. What I will say is, if it's something that you feel like that you want to fight for, a good place to start might be to start on the state level, where you can reach out to your state legislators and encourage them to work on $15 minimum wage at a state level. We're working on it now in Delaware, and we do hear a lot of conversations about when we talk about small businesses and how we support small businesses through that. And it's not easy, and it especially when we're talking about the current climate of COVID, it will severely and significantly impact a lot of small businesses. And listen, whether we want to admit it or not, being an elected official, you have to play politics. And if you represent an area that is made up heavily of small businesses, quite often that might mean risking losing your election. And there are some people who don't want to die on certain hills. They don't want to lose their seat because of an issue that would make them lose their seat. So I think when you're talking about politics, unfortunately, you do have to weigh all of those options. Would I have voted that way? No, I would have voted for $15 minimum wage, but that is the difference of who we send to those seats. So when you're upset about these things, look at who we're sending into those seats and figure out the part that you can play in changing that. Because it's as simple as that, especially when we're talking about things on a state level. I know Delaware is a really small state. So if somebody calls their state legislator, if they get 10 phone calls from constituents about an issue, those 10 phone calls will very easily change the way that they vote on something. And it can be the same thing when we're talking about things down in DC too. If you're upset about it, recognize the power that you have as a social worker and organize around that issue. Start an issue campaign, get people involved, and have them to reach out to the legislators that are voting in ways that you don't support. I think that our field, when we talk about it, we often forget how much power that we have, but social workers have a lot of power. We have a lot of skills that can make a difference, and utilize those skills. It's as simple as that. And again, I really want to stress that if it's something that means a lot to you, work on it on a state level, because there are state like ours that are just fed up with waiting for it to happen on a federal level, and we're going to work on it on a state level. If we can't get it from the people that are electing us in DC, we're going to make it happen in our state. And one thing that a lot of people we also don't talk enough about is how a lot of times things don't change federally until there is a tipping point where so many states have done it that the federal government can't say no anymore, because more than half of the states have done it anyway, so they have to catch up to us.
Thank you so much. So just to switch to a different topic, I have looks like what's a follow-up question, Assemblywoman Downey, to the information you posted earlier about the legislation you're working on related to loan forgiveness for social service employees in New Jersey. The question is, if somebody is working in an accredited facility in Pennsylvania or Delaware, for instance, would they be able to receive loan forgiveness in New Jersey if they're a New Jersey resident, I think is the question.
I mean, from what I believed it was only New Jersey, but I'm looking at just like a little synopsis that I have just to double check. But a facility operated by the Department of Human Services that provides direct care services to persons served by the department. So, I mean, I get, county psychiatric hospital facility operated by the Juvenile Justice Commission of Veterans, memorial home operated by the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, and nonprofit agency in state that contracts with the Department of Human Services or Juvenile Justice Commission. So, I mean, I have to look at the actual bill language too, because these are just the notes that I have, but I'm pretty sure that, it was supposed to be mostly for people working, want to encourage people here in the state. So to more social workers to work within the state, because we need you so much here. But some of those things, the way it sounded was that, say like in New Jersey, if we contracted with one of these other places, I'm not sure if we do. That's the question I guess I have. I don't know if New Jersey would contract with a place in Pennsylvania, but if they did, then maybe it does fall within. So I'm gonna have to look at that more carefully as well. And if you want to follow up with my office, please give me a call and we'll get some more information. Okay.
Thank you so much. And I guess, that's also a good thing to bring up, what we were just talking about with getting involved at different levels and there being a tipping point when things happen. So, we're having the discussion at the federal level, of course, about loan forgiveness and student loan forgiveness, and there are different proposals about how we can go about that at a federal level. But at the same time, we have this state effort that is not the same as loan forgiveness, but similar as providing a way that we can reimburse in some ways for the work that you've done and the time that you've put in your education. So again, to see things happen at the federal level, a lot of times we need to keep them moving at the state level. I think we could probably take one more question. I'm just trying to scroll through the chat to see if there's anything else in there. Anybody else? Last questions? I see something's just coming in. Sorry, my computer's being very slow. Oh, that was Senator Pinkney responding to somebody. Thank you so much for taking the time to respond so in depth. Okay, well, if there's, all right, this is a tricky way to end our day. Thank you, Catherine. How do you navigate the politics in politics, right? How do we deal with that difficult situation where, there's something that you feel like you may want to do or work towards or achieve, but you have to finagle it through the system. You have to play the political game. Like, how do you manage to accomplish what you need to accomplish while still dealing with the realities of our political system?
I think Tanya had her hand up there, so I didn't want to jump. No, I will be very quick because I'm sure Senator Pinkney and Assemblywoman Downey have much more experience. I say the code of ethics every time. I mean, it's our superpower. And if you follow the code of ethics and you use it and you operationalize it, and I mean, Congresswoman Barbara Lee said it best. She has a wonderful quote, which I don't have in front of me, but about how the code is our guardrails, and if we use it, it doesn't make it easy, but with your professional values and your personal values and the code of ethics, I feel like we have a really strong foundation, and we've thought about these issues ahead of time. But that doesn't mean social workers haven't gotten into trouble, because they have, unfortunately, in serious trouble, because that it's a challenging. I don't need to tell anyone here, but they are challenging issues. But if you can really be intentional and use the code, it will guide you.
Thanks, Tanya.
Do you want to go, Marie, Senator?
Sure. Please, Marie. I actually prefer it. I'm still not used to it.
I always say the same thing. So, Joann, right. Thank you.
That's a really good question. And one thing that I always try to think about for myself is recognizing my value system, which is very much ingrained in social work, and it very much grew from the field of social work, is recognizing that there are going to be things that come up for a vote that are going to ask you to compromise your value system. And just like we talked about, whether or not people are willing to die on that hill. If you live in a district that does not necessarily represent your value system. Say you live somewhere where they support your constituents support restricting access to abortion, but you know that that's fundamentally wrong and you fundamentally don't believe in it. You have to be willing to risk losing your seat because you don't want to go against your value system. If you are so willing to bend in your value system, we're talking federal politics, right? That's Mitch McConnell. He does not have a value system, and he's very much willing to bend to the will of his people, whatever his people want, to keep his seat. That's not who we need in these seats. So I would say first, recognize your value system, recognize where you're not willing to bend. But then there's the other side of that, where sometimes you have to be willing to be flexible and you have to be willing to let go a little bit to get to for the greater good. And recognizing where your values are will help you navigate that a lot. So I talked to you guys about the bill that we are bringing over from New Jersey. One of the things that New Jersey, the legislators that we spoke to in New Jersey told us right off the bat was that they had to strike out allowing, because right now the bill just allows anybody who's served a prison sentence during the pandemic to be released and receive up to a year off of their sentence. And they told us very, very early on that they had to take out people who were incarcerated for violent felonies. So people who were incarcerated because of murder or rape and things of that nature. And so we knew going into it, that was probably where we were going to have to, where we were going to have to bend as well. But what we did, because we knew that going in, we were prepared for it. We did not include that in the bill from the beginning. We knew that, because that's something that happens in policy too. It's like you start off with this really strong, amazing bill, and to get it through, it gets watered down because you have to be willing to negotiate and compromise. So we went in with it as strong as we could, recognizing that that was going to probably be the area where we had to be flexible and be willing to allow that to be let go of, so that we could get so many other people out. And although it sucks, and although we didn't get as many people out, or we're not going to be able to get as many people out as we would like, we are getting almost 700 people out because we went in strong and we recognize where we may have to be flexible on the other end. So to answer that question, the best I could say is recognize your value system, but also recognize that sometimes you're going to have to be flexible because that's just the way politics are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So did you have any last thoughts you wanted to add, Assemblywoman?
Well, you know what, just to comment on some of the things that she brought up, that I just want to, highlight in, kind of just exclamation point. She's absolutely right. We have to, you have to maintain your value system, but at the same time, when you want to get things passed, you definitely have to know that there's got to be room for compromise in terms of certain things so that you can get what you need for the greater good done. And you have to recognize, as the senator said, your area. So let's say with the bill she was just talking about that we had in New Jersey for releasing, the inmates, that was a really difficult bill for me here in my district because it is so red, it was just a difficult bill. So as it started out without that exclusions, it was going to be really tough for us to vote on. And I'll be honest with you, I was going to vote for it anyway because I was persuaded by the research and other people who convinced me that this was still better in terms of the pandemic. So I had to get over my state police view, meaning, my dad, the way I was raised, and thinking about the whole thing about, oh my gosh, if we're letting out all these people who are really violent, that just goes against everything in my body that says it's right. Because then I have to worry about these people doing things to other people again, and, the bottom line is that I didn't have to, because they did come to an agreement. See, this is the politics. They finally did come to an agreement to make sure that violent crimes were excluded. And it made a difference because for me, that was a tough point. I would have voted for it anyway, but I was happier to vote on it the way it was changed. And it will help me more, even though, by the way, I'm going to get killed in my election on it because they're going to throw that at me and say, you release criminals. They're going to throw that at me with everything they got. And they're going to throw, other things like I voted for undocumented, undocumented people getting driver's licenses here in the state of New Jersey. I totally believe it's the right thing to do on many levels because it's safer too for everybody out there. As an attorney, I know this also, that it's important to have people be able to have insurance and things like that. So I agree with every part of me that I made the right decision for everybody. But the bottom line is the people here. There are many people that disagree with that. Again, the conservatives who believe that these people shouldn't be here at all, which is terrible. We need an immigration reform. We just need immigration reform generally. But, it's a tough district, and these are the politics that go into everything. You have to kind of weigh it. But I'm not willing to not do something that's important, even if it risks my election, because I don't know how I could stay in the seat if I'm not doing the right thing for people generally. And that's how I've always felt. So you have to make those decisions.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. So it's 3:30. I think this is going to bring us to a wrap for the day. For those of you who stuck around for the extra time, thank you so much. And again, thank you to our panelists for joining us. You'll be getting an email sometime next week, as I said, with follow-up information. We will also work on getting you certificates of attendance for schools that need them. And, stay in touch. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're on all of them. Sign up for our newsletter, Newswire. Go to our website, NASW-NJ.org, and click newsletters to sign up. And please stay in touch. You'll be hearing more from us. Thank you all so much.